Thank you very much, Dr. Cassidy, and very important questions. And I'm just going to walk everybody through what we've turned up with respect to transportation of organs, because this is a major focus of the committee's investigation. We asked about it. UNOS told us, and I quote, "It does not collect transportation data on a national systematic basis." That strikes me as a showstopper kind of response. UNOS doesn't track if donated organs arrive at transplanted centers. How in the world can we give people confidence if the organization that runs this says that? Turns out UNOS only tracks the shipments they handle themselves, 4% of organ shipments. Even in this very small sample, dozens of organs are thrown away each year after transportation. UNOS doesn't know if the other 96% of shipments are just as bad because they don't ask. UNOS hasn't made any policies on safe organ transportation, and OPOs are not required to report these issues. And when complaints about transportation failures are made, UNOS doesn't even reply. So, Dr. Locke, you have been outspoken about this whole area with respect to the deficiencies in UNOS's operation. Tell us a little bit more about organ transplant problems and what your response from them has been when you have reported problems with transportation.
Thank you, Senator. Obviously, people have described that we have about a 25% kidney discard, so 1 in 4. So if you look at numbers last year, these are rough numbers, but that'd be about 8,000 kidneys. And really, I think in some ways, these were kind of a victim of an entrenched and cumbersome allocation algorithms that are very ordinal. You have to go sort of in order when data clearly have shown that introduction of multiple simultaneous expiring offers would result in more efficient placement of kidneys, and this would decrease our cold ischemia time. It also, I think, reflects a failure of transportation logistics. So if you take UNOS's organ center, they have a very rigid system, for example, for finding flights and lack either an ability or interest in thinking outside the box. So, for example, if there are no direct flights from California to Birmingham, Alabama, instead of looking for a flight from San Francisco to Atlanta, understanding that a courier could then pick it up in Atlanta and drive it the 2 hours, they'll instead put it on a flight from SFO to Atlanta and allow it to go to cargo hold overnight, where it literally is rotting, if you will, and we're putting extra time on it.
Let's make sure everybody gets this. You're saying you've seen instances of something being put in cargo hold when it is very likely to rot.
That is correct. So if the kidney arrives after 10 p.m. at the Atlanta airport, it goes to cargo hold. We discovered that and made calls to the airlines ourselves. And after several calls to the airlines, of course, they were mortified, not understanding that that was what was happening, and actually had their manager meet our courier, and we were able to get the kidney out of cargo hold. But this went on before we figured out what was happening, because essentially they fly it in, it sits in cargo hold, it comes out the next morning to catch the next flight. Instead of thinking outside the box, if we just get it to Atlanta, it's drivable to Birmingham. And those hours make a big difference.
That sounds way too logical for what UNOS is up to. So please go ahead.
So I think, from our perspective, one of the things that we really want to understand is why have we not engaged experts in applied mathematics to really optimize our matching algorithms and organ placement? And why haven't we really engaged experts in logistics around transportation? I mean, I think of the FAA, for example, what a remarkable entity. The fact that every day thousands of flights across the U.S. are in the air at the same time and don't crash into each other, and they know exactly where a given plane is, and it happens almost seamlessly every day. We should be able to do the same thing for our transplant system for our organs.
As I said, too logical. Ms. Brockmeyer, UNOS has developed this organ tracking system. Do you all use it? And I'm curious what you think of it.
Thank you for the question. Senator, we did use and participated in the beta pilot through UNOS and made the decision to not move forward using their product and have sought a commercial alternative.
And why was that?
Part of the issues were some, service-related issues, the lack of the interconnectivity that we wanted, to be able to facilitate, a more expedited visual tracking of where the organ was.
Was the tracking technology low quality?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll have some additional questions, but my time's up. Senator Grassley.
We're done. We're done.
Okay. Mr. Shepard, in your testimony, in your statement to the committee today, you highlighted how people who work on the Organ Transplant Network's board and committees come from all corners of the transplant system. You noted that this diverse group of people are essential to making difficult policy decisions for the transplant network and how effectively the system works to protect patients. Yet the way you described these people and the peer review process and the documents you provided to the committee was very different. So I'd like to enter into the record 2 emails that you wrote. Here's how you described the principal transplant oversight committee in one of your emails produced to the committee. You said, and I quote, "Allowing the committee to fill these jobs increases the community's belief in the validity of the documents," end quote. You go on to say, and I quote, "It's like putting your kid's artwork up at home. You value it because of how it was created rather than whether it's well done. Only in this case, we persuade ourselves that it is well done anyway." One more. In this email, you describe the organ transplant network that you're in charge of as nothing more than, and I quote, "an overgrown homeowners association." Now, when you compare the organ transplant network you oversee to an overgrown homeowners association, doesn't that call into question the effectiveness of the oversight and governance processes of the organ transplant system that you're saying works so well?
Senator, I don't recall those particular emails or the context, although I assume that—
They're yours.
I assume they are, sir.
They're yours, Mr. Shepard, and they're central to your belief as you try to tell us that everything's hunky-dory, that you have confidence in the people. You just wrote a bunch of emails that go 180 degrees in the other direction. Let me turn now to the issue with respect to information technology. So the principal function of UNOS is to manage the electronic databases that keep track of organ donations and match them to people on the transplant waiting list. The technology that is used here is woefully out of date. A government report entitled "The Lives Are at Stake: The Government's Role in Modernizing the OPTN" concluded that UNOS lacks sufficient technical capabilities to modernize their systems, which the current system requires. Instead of a modern, integrated cloud-based system, the UNOS system requires manual information updates at every stage. UNOS transplant computers have crashed for a total of 17 days, with one February 2021 outage lasting 3 hours. When asked by our investigators, Mr. Shepard said improving the systems to meet industry standards was not a priority for UNOS, quote, "because it's not like air traffic control." Mr. Henry, I think you're still with us, and we're glad that you are. These organs are very perishable. As somebody who received a life-saving transplant, my guess is you believe every minute counts when you're on the transplant waiting list.
Yes, absolutely. And like everyone else, we've read the USDS reports. We've read the Washington Post reports from earlier this week. And, the IT services obviously have been, in our opinion, inadequate for quite some time. On the Patient Services Committee, our leadership has voiced their concerns about the IT systems for quite some time without much of a response.
Mr. Henry, excuse me,
Yes.
how long have you been voicing your concerns about how outdated the IT systems are?
I'm speaking in this instance about the patient affairs leadership. I've been recently appointed as a representative for the Patient Affairs Committee this year. So I've read through a lot of the emails and background information and spoken with leadership of the PAC committee about these issues, including the IT services. And that is what I'm referring to as far as our concerns about the IT systems being voiced, but not addressed.
Okay.
So you are correct, Senator Wyden. Every minute counts, every second counts. When we hear about downtime as a result of IT issues, those are lives that are potentially lost, patients dying while IT systems are down. Again, heartbreaking issues that we feel should be addressed.
So, Ms. Brockmeyer, again, because you're on the front lines, tell us your experiences with UNO systems, and let's talk, for example, about something like DonorNet. Why hasn't that been modernized?
The response, Senator Wyden, that we were provided when the committee that I was chairing asked repeatedly about improvements was that there wasn't bandwidth within the UNOS IT department to address those problems.
So they just didn't have current technology.
I can't say what garnered the response, but that was the response.
You don't have bandwidth for something that's a priority. That says your technology is not up to date. All right, let's go next to OPO failure rates. Again, like everywhere in our society, there are performers that do well and some that do not. But the range of performance of organ procurement organizations is massive. The high-performing OPOs successfully recover and transplant 4 times as many organs as the poorly performing OPOs. After several years of debate on how to improve the performance of the subpar OPOs, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services adopted a rule setting performance standards for the OPO. When measured against these standards, more than 1/3 of the 57 OPOs are failing, not 1 or 2, 22. Ms. Brockmeyer, a lot of people in the OPO community oppose the CMS rule, including UNOS. When you see the large number of OPOs that are failing to meet the standard, I guess you can understand why. Your OPO is not one of them. Do you think the measure is a step in the right direction for holding OPOs more accountable?
Yes, Senator Wyden, our organization went on the record very early on in strong support of the proposed metrics. While they may not be perfect, it was certainly an improvement over what we had had year to date. The metrics are designed in such a way that everyone can accomplish that. We can all be Tier 1 performers. It takes a dedicated effort, the right staff, the appropriate training and resourcing to ensure that your OPO is available to respond every time the phone rings to ensure all the organs are recovered.
All right, let's talk for a moment about the boards that are supposed to be overseeing these, because it looks to me like there's a serious conflict of interest here, and I'll send this to Ms. Brockmeyer, and perhaps you'd like to get to it as well, Mr. Friedman. The Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, which is the formal title of the organ network that operates under federal contract administered by HHS, and UNOS, which is the contractor that operates the network and controls information about the network, have the same boards of directors, despite efforts by the government to separate them. That means the people who look out for the best interests of UNOS, the multi-million-dollar nonprofit, are the same people who look out for the interests of the entire organ transplant network. Sure sounds like a conflict to me. Ms. Brockmeyer, Mr. Friedman, UNOS claims that the 2 boards must be the same. Okay, that's their claim. They've got to be the same. And there's no need for the board of the OPTN to be independent from the board of the government contractor that runs it. Why shouldn't the network have an independent board? An independent board that can make its own judgments about whether the contractor is performing adequately. Your thoughts, Ms. Brockmeyer or Mr. Friedman?
Yes, Senator Wyden, I think there should be an independent board. I think the division of the responsibilities of the board and by the inherent way that they're structured do pose conflicts. It would be like if you had an organization that was a supporting organization, you'd want to hold it accountable for its performance, and the current structure really limits that opportunity.
Mr. Friedman?
Chairman Wyden, actually, HRSA and CMS, they actually changed board complexity for OPOs requiring non-transplant individuals, and the same thing can be employed here as well. As we make organ allocation changes, people win, people lose. And what we've done in this country through the efforts of this board is really allowed individuals to express their opinion at the board level and the executive board level that were based more towards their own individual needs. And this has to change. And that's why I continuously at our Region 3 meetings continuously recommend that we separate that out and allow the membership of UNOS, this is a membership-driven organization, to bring us up to speed so that we have transparency and that we regain the trust of our providers, our hospitals, our OPOs, the patients, and the donor families. We cannot lose that trust, and I fully support you as the chairman of this to enact that immediately. That could be part of the contract.
We're just trying to determine if we have any senators on the way. Let me ask our Republican colleagues.
I'm going to go.
And we do.
You need me for
We do
something?
not.
Okay.
Thank you for your participation in this.
Thank you.
But we are very pleased that a strong advocate of patients, Senator Casey, is here, and let's let him get settled, and we'll go to him for his questions, and then I've got a couple of other areas that we need to look at briefly. Senator Casey, all set?
Mr. Chairman, thanks very much. I wanted to start by thanking you for